going to do our large group.
You want me to record this?
Yes. So again, we're going to do the large group questions, or the small group questions together. When you answer for me, I'm going to repeat it so that the folks who are reviewing this can hear you and hear your splendor and your wisdom. So enough of me here. So lesson 1.4. Number 1. 2 miracle stories frame the passion prediction/journey section in Mark, and so comment on its meaning. How do these miracle stories alert you to what is happening on the way to Jerusalem? Hello, I'm up here. How do these stories alert you to what is happening on the way to Jerusalem?
People are reaching out.
Reaching out to Jesus? That's what you got from that?
I got symbolism.
Symbolism? What?
I got 2 blind men symbolize those, including the disciples who've heard Jesus' messages and do not understand it fully at first, but
Yeah.
over time.
Now, I'm not saying that people aren't, but why is Mark telling this? Mark is telling the story about the 2 blind men, remember, because that's the frame for the triple prediction, passion prediction. The disciples don't get it. Each time they refuse to accept that suffering and death and pain is part of the Jesus story. And so Jesus sits them down.
But is that, I'm sorry, I got that too, but I also wonder if this is about seeing.
Seeing? Is it about seeing? Insofar as what is Jesus is on the way where? To his passion. And his disciples are with him on the way. So what is he doing to them on the way? Teaching them, enlightening them. Yeah, it's like school. It's like school, all right? So the journey, in fact, next time, do we do Luke next? I don't know. In Luke's gospel, Luke builds on that. The journey to Jerusalem is school about being a disciple. So while he's on his way, Jesus is instructing them. And the 2 blind men stories are the bookends. And the first blind man comes to sight slowly because he's a reference to the disciples who kind of get Jesus because they're there, huh? And they kind of don't get him at all because they're not ready or willing or wanting to have the cross. Okay? Anybody got more to want to say? Skip number 2, go to number 3. Based on your readings of the passion predictions and the subsequent interchanges between Jesus and the disciples, A, what do you see as Mark's understanding of who Jesus is? Who can help me? From Mark's vantage point, the way Mark presents this, who is Jesus? The Messiah who dies. Yeah, don't just say the Messiah. He is that.
I did, I put in.
The Messiah who suffers. Remember the last time I talked about the Christology, that the vision of Jesus in each of the Gospels? In Mark, it's Jesus is the suffering Messiah. Okay? That suffering, not an accident, not a coincidence. It's essential.
I took it a little, I took a different angle. I kept on focusing in Mark use of the word Son of Man.
Son of Man, yes?
You know, that there's a suffering that comes with it. We're supposed to join in on it. But
Yes.
Humanity of the Son of Man.
Okay, suffering for other people, not so much. That's not so much Mark's thing. You're right, though. Now, if you go back and read Daniel 7, which we read last time, again, read the whole chapter. It's really a violent chapter. Remember, there are 4 beasts, and these beasts are standing for empires, and the Jewish people are suffering at the hands of these. The Son of Man is going to come along, and he had to endure these beasts, but now he will be vindicated. So in the idea Son of Man is one who suffers and is vindicated, goes back to Daniel. But not for the world. We're not talking about the World Health Organization. We're not talking about UNICEF. That's not Mark's deal. Mark does not have a social justice bone in his body. Okay? Just doesn't. Luke is the gospel that really is concerned about that. Huh? But Mark has got fixated by something else. But I'm glad you brought it up. Anything else? Peter?
I had totally connected to the will of the Father and not seeking any earthly advantage or glory.
Jesus is totally connected to the will of the Father and not seeking earthly glory. Bravo. Mark would say, you got it, Peter. Simon, son of John. Okay. Good.
I have another question.
Yes.
So what's the meaning of suffering? Why does he have to suffer?
I'm going to say wait on that. Just wait on that. Sorry. B. What do you see as Mark's understanding of what it means to be Jesus' disciple? Now, if you got A wrong, you'll get B wrong. Huh? Okay? Because B builds on A. What is it? What is, in Mark's mind, what is key to discipleship? Give up? Surrender?
You deny yourself.
Deny yourself. Now, think of those, in each of those episodes where Jesus sits them down, there's that key line. Deny yourself.
Take up your
That's the first one. The one who takes care of this child, the greatest, is the one who serves the least. And then the last one was to be a servant of all. Okay? So sacrifice for the in a broad sense is what discipleship for Mark means. C. How does Mark's understanding of discipleship correspond to your experience of being a disciple of Jesus? Now, this is going to be reflect our own personal stories. Would any of you a couple of you want to share? How does Mark's vision of discipleship reflect or impact or connect with your own experience of discipleship?
What I put is to be a disciple of Jesus, I believe we must be supportive of social justice issues in society and fight for the sanctity of life from conception to natural death. We must also serve others in charity and good works.
So what Bernie is saying, for those of you who can't hear, is he talks about to be a disciple of Jesus is to be concerned about social justice issues, life, for example. And I think take it a little further, Bernie, because this is not going to be popular. Now, the thing that makes the connection to Mark is that living from the light of the gospel is not going to be well received. And that's where your suffering comes in. That's where, so go a little bit further, and Mark would recognize that. Even though I said earlier, Mark isn't so into social justice himself, he is recognizing that suffering is a necessary part. Not because God, I love it when you're hurt. No, but because living this gospel, you will stick out like a sore thumb in the culture. And so you should expect some resistance. Anybody else want to share from this side? You're letting them do all the talking today.
I wrote about being all in as a Catholic.
Being what in? All in as a Catholic.
Not being a Lutheran.
What does all in mean? What does that all in mean for you? Can you push a little bit?
Sure, that you're not just saying the word, you actually live the gospel, which is unpopular, and you will stick out, and you will be ridiculed and persecuted for your beliefs or your actions.
Now, let's hope we are persecuted for the right actions.
Right.
Sometimes you're persecuted because we're nasty people, because we're judgmental, because we're hypocritical. No, we want to be suffering because because our value system is really out of joint with the value system of another environment or a culture. Again, if as I said, and again, American culture does reflect the philosophers: wealth, power, fame, pleasure. That's what my parents wanted me to do. They got me baptized, but they want go to school, work hard, get ahead, get a good job, So there's a little no wonder we feel a little bit pulled in two directions. We're amphibian. We live in two worlds. We either live in water or live on land, huh? So my parents wanted me to be happy. I bet you your parents did, and you want your kids to be happy. But there may be a conflict. Peter?
There's a great story that Tom Thibodeau tells about one of his ministry majors, that her father was very upset that he plunked down $50,000 for her education and she got a crappy job in a parrot.
Yeah, okay. Again, Peter's telling a story about a parent who paid big money at a private Catholic school, and his daughter ended up just working in a church for minimum wage, huh? The only time when I was a Newman chaplain, parents were quite nice to me and quite positive about the Newman Chapel's presence on campus. But one time, their child, who I guess they wanted to go to law school or medical school or something, instead wanted to work in Haiti. And he said, "I hold you accountable. You filled her head full of this crap." And I said, "Sir, you had her baptized, didn't you? Don't. You're the one who got her started. I was just doing what I thought you wanted." But I'm not a parent, but I'm sure what you want for your children collides with what Jesus wants for your children. Sorry. All right, number 5. Based on the article "Son of Man" in the Erdman's dictionary, describe the term "Son of Man" in Mark 1-13. Who wants to do that? Just a few things. You did do this homework, did you? Come on, over here. Sunshine, side. Please.
So
Big voice.
I kind of quoted from the EDB.
That's what they wanted you to do,
Yes.
quote from the EDB.
Yes, and so the part that stuck out to me the most was the list 3 categories which term "Son of Man" is used. As the first was earthly ministry of Jesus, second was humiliation and suffering Jesus, and the third was the future coming in judgment.
Excellent. So again, in the EDB article, one thing you should catch, those of you who are at home, is that the article divides that Son of Man kind of falls under 3 rubrics. The first again was
The earthly ministry.
earthly ministry. This is Jesus doing his thing. Second is Son of Man gets associated with Jesus' suffering. In fact, in John's gospel, the only time Son of Man appears is when Jesus talks about his death. That's kind of peculiar. And then the third one is the Son of Man coming in judgment at the end of time. Okay, that's the figure of God, Christ coming in judgment. Would anybody tackle letter B? What meaning does the term Son of Man have for you? Now, again, I hope after reading the EDB that might influence your answer to B. But anybody? Peter?
Well, when I first started seeing the term "Son of Man," I had a lot of trouble with it. Because, wait, this is the Son of God. How does this become the Son of Man? And then I started to understand, okay, that's the humbling part of Jesus, the Son of Man. He comes as a servant. And so that's why the Son of Man terminology it made sense to me anyway.
Uh-huh.
But then, one of the readings we had to do was to go into the dictionary and look up the Son of Man. And then we get into mythology. And the Son of Man was something used in mythology pretty regularly.
Mm-hmm.
And it shows up in somebody we don't use anymore, but it was part of the Enoch, in the book of Enoch.
Enoch.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That it came from mythology.
Yes. No, is that everything you want to say? Because you say mythology, yes. I think more accurately I'd say Jewish religious writings that didn't make the Bible. Just so we understand, it's not like this is the good stuff and then that stuff is phony. I guess I get irritated. The word myth is usually used in English to say false. You mean falsehood? It's a myth, and I don't know that you meant that, but the point is mythology is how a culture defines who it is. You're right. The Son of Man is this figure who but as it grows, he becomes a divine human figure. He's somehow God's special agent. So at the beginning, maybe you think of Son of Man as just Jesus' mortality or his humanity. And I can see that. But because of books like Enoch, we see by Jesus' day, the Son of Man is also used to talk about a special agent of God who's going to be in human form. Okay? Yes?
Can I talk a little bit more on that? You had mentioned Son of Man as being
Ambivalent.
Ambivalent.
When Jesus uses it, my point is, what do people who hear him say that, what do they think? He's kind of, it could be, well, he's just saying he's immortal. You know, my point is, Jesus is, he's not saying he's Son of God. Yeah, here I am, I'm the Christ. Doesn't say that, does he? I'm the Son of Man. And that allows the listener to interpret it as, I'm just a humble human being. Or it's this agent, this figure that's developing in Daniel and in Enoch. I am God's special agent, come from heaven.
So I saw that. I used the example of the woman with the hemorrhage.
Uh-huh.
How she reached out to him physically
As a human
being.
Yes.
But yet he performed
Yes.
the miracle to heal her. So it's that double and both.
Good. So the answer she provided is she thinks about the story where Jesus is in the crowd and the woman with the bleed comes, fights with the crowd, and touches Jesus. Her ability to touch him is what, through that touch comes the transforming, healing power. And that comes alive to her as the Son of Man. That's good. Yes?
I wrote about how, before this class, I used to think of Son of Man as Mary's contribution
Yeah.
to Jesus, and the Son of God was the Spirit's. And so that's kind of changed now, but that's how I used to think of
Right.
it.
And there are, so she talks about back in the battle days before she was enlightened, she thought of the Son of Man as Jesus' mortality, what Mary provided. You know, God had to borrow mortality. If God wanted to sacrifice himself to show us his love, he's got to borrow our humanity because God can't die. And that's what you thought of a Son of Man. Now, it is that. It can be that, but it's so much more. So I bristle when people just say Son of Man is Jesus' humanity. You know, Jesus is wholly, totally human, totally divine. Son of Man is immortality, is human side. Son of God is divine. No, it's more than that. I will if I hear you say that. Huh? But it is that. It is Jesus' humanity. But that figure of Son of Man is developing through the centuries. In Ezekiel, about 5 centuries before Jesus, it simply means human being. That's all it ever means. But by the 1st century, there's these extra layers added on by Daniel, added on by Enoch. Enoch, which is not in our Bible, but was read by many Jews.
Disappeared in the 4th century, I think. Enoch did. What?
Say that again?
Enoch was in our Bible until the 4th century.
Yeah, that's it's in the Ethiopian Christian church. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church still reads Enoch. It was never in the canon of the great church. But it was out there, alive and read by people. Peter.
Do you know if Mark's view of Son of Man, or his use of that term, kind of had a role in the Aryan beliefs, like Mormons and Jehovah's Witnesses?
I don't know. Peter's asking if Son of Man became, if that Jesus' use of a title like Son of Man developed or was part of in the 3rd and 4th century when the church was trying to talk about, well, who was Jesus? There was 2 parties, and one party said he's totally divine, and the other party said, well, no, he's not totally divine. He was God's first creature. I don't know that Son of Man was a big part of it. I know other texts that were. Proverbs 8 was a big part of it. In Mark 13, when Jesus says, I don't know when the end is coming, only the Father knows. Those were big texts. I don't know if Son of Man was ever part of it, but I'm not really well formed on 4th century Christology either. Yeah. Okay? All right. So, the last one, 6. Continue to trace the mark and theme of understanding and misunderstanding. in chapters 8 to 13, list those who demonstrate a correct understanding of who Jesus is and those who misunderstand Jesus. So let's do it together. Who understands Jesus in these chapters?
The short list.
Who's on the short list? Bartimaeus, the blind man after the second healing, maybe? Which scribe? Oh, we didn't read it, but the scribe who answers the question, who commends Jesus on his answer. Yeah, love God with all your heart, love your neighbor as yourself. And Jesus compliments him. Well, first, the man compliments Jesus, and Jesus gets complimented back, or compliments the man back. Good. That may be it.
How about the children?
People.
He holds them up as an example.
Well, that doesn't mean they understand, though.
Yeah.
It's like if I just here. Okay. I wouldn't say the children. Who misunderstands? Who especially? The disciples. The disciples. They become the punching bag in Mark's gospel. Okay? In fact, there is a little commentary on Mark that proposes that this was no accident. Now, again, I don't buy this at all. This is written by a Lutheran scholar whose name is escaping me right now. Kaiser, I think, or Krenz. Anyway, he said this is evidence that Peter, that Mark had difficulty with Peter and with anybody who wants to be, pope, kind of popish things. That's way overreading. The guy dragged his Lutheran anti-Catholic view into the text. I have a much better solution and answer for why. If you're asking, were the disciples really so dumb? I don't think they're quite as dumb as Mark portrays them to be. But Mark has a reason to portray them as being dolts. Not because he didn't like them, because he was trying to start a church without bishops, or that was the article, that was the point of the commentator I was speaking about. But you gotta wait till next lecture to find out. Okay? Do you need to can you move on? Do you want to stand a little bit, or we just mush on? Any questions? We have Uni's question on the floor. We'll get to it. That's part of what I just talked about. What is suffering? What is suffering? What does Mark mean by this? Huh? I've got a solution. It may not be the solution, but it's my solution. All right. We did not read chapter 13. It's just too much. So there's a handout on your table. It says, background to reading the eschatological discourse in Mark. Have that out and available. Chapter 13 is Jesus' last big speech. Huh? Got problems here?
No, I want to separate these. So.